Hola y bienvenidos a la unidad 6, lección 62B. Unit 6, lesson 62B, participios y el presente progresivo, participles and present progressive tense. ¿Qué necesitas hoy? Necesitas el paquete de la unidad 6, algo con que escribir, lápiz o bolígrafo, y cuaderno o papel suelto. So you're going to need your notebook or some scratch paper to do some practice activities. Ok, el objetivo de hoy, los estudiantes podrán create a present participle and narrate about self and others using the present progressive tense. The verb for today is determinar, to determine. And our quote of the day, la cita, dice, tu actitud, no tu aptitud, determinará tu altitud. Your attitude, not your aptitude, your ability, will determine your altitude, how high, how far you can go. So let's have a positive attitude so that we can fly high. Here we go. Reminder, as always, you can find, if you do not have your packet, you can find the resource we are working with in your online resource finder by going to the Launchpad and opening up your resource finder. We are working with present progressive and participles. Okay, you need to go to the very last page in your packet, your Unit 6 packet. At the top, it's labeled present participles and the present progressive tense in Spanish. And we're going to start by learning how to create a participle. Now, you don't need to necessarily know or understand what a participle is. You just need to know how to form it. So, the present participle of a verb is used in conjunction with the verb estar in the present progressive tense, which we will learn in the second part of this lesson, to indicate several ongoing actions or states and or habitual actions. The present participle is the equivalent of the English ing ending on verbs: talking, running, eating, buying, etc. So it's like putting on the ing onto a verb in English. How do we do it? It's very simple. So to form the present participle, we're going to take off our AR, ER, IR, and we're going to add the following endings to our verb stem or our root. So for AR verbs, we're going to add ando. So for example, the verb hablar, if I take off my AR, that leaves me HABL, and I add ando, and that gives me the participle hablando, speaking. If we're working with an ER verb, we're going to take off our ER and add back yendo. So for example, the verb comer, to eat, I take off my ER, that leaves me COM, and my ending yendo, put it all together, and we get comiendo, eating. IR verbs use the same ending, yendo. So for example, vivir, to live. If I take off my IR, my stem is be, ibe. I add yendo, and I get viviendo, living. Note, so on your sheet, you have this note. You might want to highlight it. If the stem of a ER or an IR verb, so not the ARs, just the ER or IR verbs, ends in a vowel, instead of putting yendo, I-E-N-D-O, we're going to put yendo, Y-E-N-D-O. So for example, the verb leer, if I take off my ER, that leaves me L-E. The end of the root is a vowel. So instead of putting yendo, I'm going to put a Y, leyendo. Oír is another one, to hear. If I take off my IR, I'm just left with a O. That's a vowel. I'm going to add Y-E-N-D-O instead of I-E-N-D-O, and that gives me oyendo. And then we have the verb ir, which you really haven't learned yet. It's going to come up in the next unit. Ir means to go. If we take away the ir, there's nothing left. So we're just going to have yendo. So the participle of ir is yendo. Lastly, any IR verb that has a stem change in the third person preterite. The preterite is the past tense, which you will not learn until near the end of this year. So I will give these to you, just like any other stem change I've been helping you out with. So verbs that IR verbs that have a stem change in the third person in the preterite, keep that stem change in the participle. So that's a weird extra rule that you really won't know. So again, I will help you out. But some examples are servir. Servir in the past tense is a stem changer. The E changes to I. And so we would keep that SIRV and add ENO, sirviendo. Dormir is another one. The O changes to U. Remember, this is past tense we're talking about. In the present tense, the O changes to UE. Durmiendo. Decir is a E to I stem change in the past tense, diciendo. Okay, so that's it. So again, we're taking off our AR, ER, or IR, and we're adding ando or yendo. And if the stem adds a vowel for ER, IRs, we're putting yendo with a Y. Let's practice. So grab your notebook or a piece of scratch paper. And you're going to do practice with 12 verbs here. I've categorized them for you as AR, ERs, and IRs. And in the IR column, I gave you one, number 11, dormir, which is a O to U stem change in the preterite past. So you're going to need to do that stem change before you add your IENDO. And remember to think about for your ER and IR verbs here, if the stem ends in a vowel, to put YENDO. All right, go ahead and pause the video and write these out. Write out the participle for each one, and then come back and we'll check your answers. Okay, great. Let's review. Number 1, trabajar. Take off the AR. That leaves us trabaj. Add ando, trabajando. Hablar. You should have hablando. Andar. Andando. Manejar. Manejando. For our ER verbs, volver, take off the ER, that leaves volv. Add yendo, volviendo. Comprender turns into comprendiendo. Correr turns into corriendo. Leer, take off the ER, that leaves us only LE. That's a vowel at the end of the stem, so instead of putting IENDO, we need to put YENDO, leyendo. Our last group, the IR verbs. Salir, take off the IR, that leaves us with sal. Add yendo, gives us saliendo. Conducir becomes conduciendo. Dormir with a stem change, DORM is going to turn into DURM, plus our participle yendo gives us durmiendo. And dividir turns into dividiendo. How did you do? Hopefully all right. If you had any mistakes, make sure you correct them. Make note of where you went wrong, because we're going to do some more practice. Okay, in your packet at the bottom underneath where we did our notes, you've now got a table with the same verbs that I have on the screen. So you're just going to do some more practice of putting or changing these verbs into present participles. Again, make sure that you are thinking about your ER, IR verbs and whether they end in a vowel or not in the stem, so that you put YENDO instead of IENDO. And then these last two down here have stem changes. So go ahead and pause the video again. And when you're ready, come back to check your answers. Okay, here we go. Left-hand column, contar, you should have contando. Llevar becomes llevando. tomar, tomando, estudiar, estudiando, bailar, bailando, caminar, caminando, escuchar, escuchando, crear, creando, desayunar, desayunando, cenar, cenando. The AR verbs are pretty easy. There's no exceptions. They all follow the rules. Other side, beber becomes bebiendo, hacer, haciendo, ver, viendo, leer, look out. Again, that ER comes off. Our stem then ends in a vowel. We have to put yendo with a Y. Vender, vendiendo. Insistir, insistiendo. Incluir, this is another one where the root ends in a vowel. If we take off the IR, our last letter is a U, that's a vowel. Instead of IENDO, we have to put YENDO, and that gives us incluyendo. Ir, as we noted previously on our notes, when we take the IR off of ir, there's nothing left, so we put yendo. Pedir is the stem changing verb, so if I take off my IR, that leaves me PED. The E changes to I, so I get pid, and then my yendo, pidiendo. And same thing for venir. Venir, take off the IR, that leaves me ben. The E changes to I, that gives me bin. And then yendo, my ultimate participle is viniendo. All right, hopefully you've got those all correct. Again, if not, make any changes, make note of where you're going wrong. If you're really confused at this point, call me over for some help so we can try to figure out where you're going wrong, because you need these now for the next step that we're going to do. All right, before we learn about using our participles in the present progressive, we need a quick reminder of the verb estar. We learned about estar back in our 5 to be verb unit, and we learned that estar is used for feelings and emotions or location, but it's also used to help us form what is called the present progressive tense. So to be able to do the present progressive tense, we need to remember our conjugations of the verb estar, which is estoy, estás, está, estamos, estáis, están. You might want to write that on the very back page of your packet now, if you don't already have those memorized. So take a moment, pause the video, and write that down. Okay, let's move on. So you have what's on the screen on your paper here. Just make some notes or highlights as we go. Present progressive tense. So to form the, present progressive in Spanish, we use the correct form of the verb estar with a participle. So 2 ingredients, the verb estar and the participles that we just learned how to make. So for example, I am speaking. Yo estoy hablando. We took our verb hablar, cut off the AR, put ando, and we got ando. When we put it all together, I am speaking. Juan está comiendo. John is eating. Maria está escribiendo una carta. Mary is writing a letter. The present progressive tense is only used for actions that are in progress. In other words, happening right now in this second. This is a little bit different than how we use the present progressive in English. We use it a little more widely. In Spanish, we want to use that only to express or indicate that, oh, hey, what are you doing? Right now, I'm doing this. So look at the comparison here of the present indicative, that's the regular present tense that we've been working with, versus the present progressive. So we can say, estudio español. That can translate as 3 different things in English. I study Spanish. I am studying Spanish these days, generally. Not this moment, but these days. So this is where the ing is a little bit different with English. Or I do study Spanish. On the other side, estoy estudiando español. That's the present progressive. I am studying. But that means right now, in this moment. as you guys are with this video. I am studying Spanish right now. It's important to note or to remember that you would never use the present progressive to say something like, we are going to Spain this summer. That is actually what is called the simple future tense, which we are going to learn in the next unit. Okay. Lastly, I would highlight this again at the bottom of your notes. If you have a reflexive verb, we're going to attach the participle, or I'm sorry, we're going to attach the pronoun, our reflexive pronoun, to the participle. So, for example, yo estoy despertándome temprano. I am waking up early. Right now, this moment, I'm waking up early. Notice there's a tilde now on the participle. So that's going to be a rule. I'm not going to go into why you have to change that. It's a little complicated to teach you. Just need to memorize that if we have a reflexive verb, we're going to attach the reflexive pronoun to the participle, and then the first letter of the participle is going to turn into a tilde, an accent. All right, that was a whole bunch. Let's see if you can put it together. Use your notes, use the info right up above to put these sentences together. Let's do the first one together. El niño, we're going to use the verb escuchar, el reloj cuckoo. So the boy or the kid is listening to the clock go cuckoo, old cuckoo clock. So our first step is we need to use the verb estar. For el niño, third person singular would be está. And then we need to make a participle out of escuchar. We're going to cut off our AR, which leaves us escuch. And then we're going to add ando for an AR verb. And we get escuchando. So my whole sentence should say, el niño está escuchando el reloj cuckoo. All right, your job, complete the other 14. Again, remember on your participles to pay attention to if I gave you stem changes and if they're ER-IRs that whose root ends in a vowel, that you're going to put Y-E-N-D-O instead of I-E-N-D-O. Pause the video, fill in the blanks with your present progressive, and then come back to check your work. Okay, let's see how you did. So we did number 1. Again, el niño está escuchando. Number 2, los atletas están recibiendo otro trofeo. The athletes are receiving another trophy. Yo estoy llevando unas sandalias. I am wearing some sandals. Julio y yo estamos haciendo un lío aquí. Julio and I are making an effort here. Los bebés están durmiendo tranquilamente. The babies are sleeping tranquilly. Tú estás despertándote tempranísimo. You are waking up super early. Okay, so this one, we had a reflexive verb, despertarse, right? So we had to put te on the end. Remember that reflexive verb pronoun, even though it's on the end, it still has to match our subject, tú. And we had to put a tilde over the a of ando. Tú estás despertándote. Number 7, el turista está buscando su pasaporte. The tourist is looking for their passport. El testigo está diciendo más mentiras. The witness is saying more lies. Nosotros estamos volviendo de las vacaciones. We are coming back from vacation. Yo estoy divirtiéndome mucho en la playa. Another reflexive verb here. So we had to put the reflexive pronoun on to the end, attach it to the participle, and then the first letter of our Um, well, actually, the E, this is complicated also because the E is a stronger letter. So divirtiéndome gets the first syllable is probably a better way to teach you. The first syllable of the participle gets the tilde. Los gemelos están llevando ropa idéntica. The twins are wearing identical clothing. Lola y Luis están riéndose como locos. Reflexive verb. So our reflexive pronoun has to attach to our participle riendo, and our first syllable of the participle gets a tilde. Lola and Luis are laughing themselves like crazy. Ustedes están trayendo el postre. Traer ends in a vowel, so we had to put yendo instead of yendo. They are bringing dessert. Jesus y yo estamos leyendo tiras cómicas. Jesus and I are reading comic strips. And yo no estoy fracasando este curso. I am not failing this course. All right, that's the end of this lesson. I hope you did great. You'll be continuing to practice the present progressive for the rest of the year. This is a form that is used quite frequently. Again, the takeaway here is to remember we only do the present progressive if we're wanting to say that right now, in this moment, something is happening. Okay, that's it for now. Mark yourself complete and move on to your next lesson.